My name is Abramson III, and I have the pleasure of serving as the Advocacy Coordinator for WFSA.
No.
I'll be sharing with you today foundation in the country to run our own legislation, founded on the research and program evaluation of our innovative solution programs. If you have questions about our advocacy efforts and legislative priorities throughout this session, simply use the QR code on screen to join our live chat via phone or type the URL in a new browser window. We have staff online ready to answer any questions you may have. Our advocacy programming takes a multidisciplinary approach, creating opportunities for WFSA to engage subject matter experts, state and local elected officials, and Arizonans with lived experiences in helping us build our legislative priorities. Today, we will cover just a few of the elements that help WFSA make community-based decisions in support of women and girls in Arizona. The WE Network, aka the Women's Advocacy Network, is our ongoing e-newsletter that allows subscribers to gain insight into the work we're doing along with opportunities to get involved. This past year, we've been able to use the WE Network to update members when we need their support to move legislation at the Capitol. This could be by signing into the Request to Speak system or ask them to contact their legislators to support bills using research-based talking points and data. Additionally, we have provided members with step-by-step guidance on how to add their name to a ballot initiative and in-depth voting guides during the recent midterm elections. Our WE Network members are among the first to hear about all of our legislative events as well. We encourage you to use the QR code on screen to sign up for the WE Network today. Now, for WE Network members who want to take the additional step and get further involved in WFSA advocacy efforts, this year we established the Advocacy Coalition. The Advocacy Coalition is an opportunity for advocates to work directly alongside WFSA staff as we prepare for the legislative year. For example, during the midterm elections, WE Network members received information regarding the election, while Advocacy Coalition members received in-depth analysis regarding various elected positions and ballot propositions from both WFSA staff and our partners at Goodman Schwartz Public Affairs. Through coalition meetings, advocates are prepped with information and strategies to contact their legislators while developing a stronger understanding of the legislative process. Now, being the Women's Foundation for the state of Arizona, our goal is to have representation from across the Grand Canyon state within every legislative district. We invite you to become an Advocacy Coalition member today. Another important approach is our virtual legislative kickoff event, which will be held in January. This event will give attendees an opportunity to gain further insight into what WFSA advocacy will look like for the 2023 legislative session, along with an in-depth assessment of Governor-elect Hobbs' State of the State address. In addition to the legislative kickoff event, we'll be hosting our Day at the Capitol, which we are excited to announce will be returning to an in-person event at the state capitol on March 8th. We will also host a legislative update event that will occur mid-session. We encourage you to sign up for our WE Network emails to be the first to know when to register for this exciting series of events. Our legislative activity has been successful over the last several years. In 2021, we ran and successfully passed HB 2016. HB 2016 allows an individual to continue to receive child care assistance while they pursue a full-time education. Without this bill, parents pursuing education would have to work a minimum of 20 hours per week in order to receive child care benefits, even while going to work at school full-time. In 2022, WFSA and advocates joined several community organizations to pass SB 1272, which extends access postpartum care from a mere 60 days to the next full year following birth. The United States has an ongoing maternal morbidity crisis that disproportionately affects women of color. There is a strong correlation between those maternal morbidity rates and a lack of healthcare coverage. Unfortunately, this also holds true for Arizona, where 80% of all pregnancy-related deaths are considered preventable. That is why 12-month coverage is a necessity, and SB 1272 has made that extension of coverage happen. WFSA's legislative efforts continued to positively impact Arizona families as we advocated for and successfully championed Healthy Families Arizona, a program that aids parents and caregivers, most of whom are mothers, get their families off to a successful start. Through a research-backed home visitation method, Healthy Families Arizona works with families who meet certain criteria, providing them the supports and education services needed at a time where infant development is at such an important foundational stage. Healthy Families Arizona was able to secure $10 million in ongoing state funding through the legislative and budgeting process. I could honestly rave about this program and the amazing staff that are behind it, but what better way to talk about this program and its impact than to meet with a successful participating family?
I came across Healthy Families the day after I delivered my sixth child in the recovery postpartum room. One of the representatives came in and told me about this program, and it was exactly what I was looking for. What made me want to participate in this Healthy Families program was 5 weeks prior to the Healthy Families representative. Her name was Margaret. Prior to her being in my postpartum delivery room, I had just moved to the state, and my husband was working long hours at a new job. I had 5 other children. I didn't really have friends, and I knew no one here. And Healthy Families program presented an opportunity, and one I felt I needed to take. It was to become engaged in the community. And I knew that if I was more engaged in a positive outlet, especially in a new community, I knew that I could find healing through this very challenging time of my life. Moving to the state, not having anyone, and having a new baby. And not just a new baby, it was a sixth baby. That was a pivotal point in my life. And I knew that I was in a dark place. I was in Arizona, but the Arizona sun was not able to reach the darkness of my soul at that time in my life. And so this program came into my life, and I knew that it was truly the answer. Some of the most helpful things that I had and have learned through Healthy Families is people come into your life for a reason, a season, and a time. We've heard that, but it was evident as I continued in this program. Each home specialist would come, and for the beginning, I had several, just because of different situations that they had to rearrange. And that was actually turned out to be the best because I had such positive role models in my life. And each month I could gain more from somebody else. And so we did stay on the same curriculum, though it's a book called Find Your Gold Within. And in that book, it goes into personal goals. It goes into deep questions that allow you to realize, what are my purposes? What does give me joy? How can I improve, and not just improve as a general sense, but in a more categoric way of personal development. And through that program of the book, going each week, going through and setting goals, and then learning how to actually achieve those goals and stay on target and not get too distracted with other aspects of life, had sincerely helped me find more courage in myself. As I was able to attain those goals, I realized that I did have a lot of strength as an individual. I was able to see my life through a different lens. Healthy Families has impacted my future by gaining confidence to participate in my community. I found that once I was able to look outside of myself, and I was on the road to healing, I did want to become active in my community. And so they through their resources, were able to open that up for me. It was slow, and that is exactly how I wanted it. Once a month, there was an activity here or there. There were parent calls where you would go on Zoom, and you would be on camera on Zoom. Sometimes that takes a lot, right? And I was able to have things on my calendar to do to get myself outside of the house. And by doing that, I found more confidence and courage to serve within my community. When service projects had come, when there were opportunities that came, I actually said yes. I felt that I could do it. And I only gained more just peace and comfort and healing for my own self as I was serving others. Healthy Family has helped me navigate successfully through my own healing. I was able to, without guilt, address postpartum, the emotional, the psychological, the physical healings. There's a spiritual element in there. I was able to go through the program and not feel guilty that I wasn't focusing on the health of my children, because what mattered most at my time in my life was my mental state. And I needed to be able to be a full positive contributor before I could think about my 6 children. But they helped me find the tools and use the tools of, as I had said, goal setting, addressing situations where I felt inadequate or I felt incapable. Some of the barriers I had was, as I moved in, I was 5 weeks from having a baby. I wasn't lifting boxes. I wasn't even unpacking my house. I had other people come in and unpack my house. And as grateful as I was to them that they did that, my home was as if it was somebody else's home. And so as I healed physically and as I graduated to being able to move back into my home, I did it in a positive way. I was able to go through in a healthy state of mind to create a home out of this house that I was just transplanted into. The goals I have as I continue in this program are to continue to find ways to better myself and actually address the weaknesses of my character. For instance, I have kind of a fear of power tools. I have always wanted to feel confident in operating power tools. I have such a desire to create things that you would by using power tools. But as I go through this program, those types of things, the Find Your Gold Within book allows me to actually see myself through the different lens. Oh, I do have that fear. It's irrational, but let's address it. And then I have the support to actually kind of go back and say, hey, how is that goal? How are you doing? Healthy Families is a program that is birth to 5 years. So I have accomplished 1 year out of the 5, and amazing growth of confidence and character and emotional healing, and has come from being able to participate in the program. And I hope that as I have 4 more years, and as my youngest children in those 4 years, they will be going to school, and I will have more time on my hands. And so the skills and the character that I am developing in this program at this time, I hope that by the time that I do graduate this program, and that my youngest will be in full-time school at that point, back to the power tools, I will have the time and the confidence and hopefully the skill to accomplish something even greater than I am right now. There is a wide variety of community partners that provide resources, such as the diaper bank, such as, and that is what it is, you get diapers, which is a big help. There is a mystery box for reading. In that box you have um, you have books that come free to you and activities to engage your children while you're reading the book or after you read the book. There are parent nights where you yourself, with or without your children, can participate. You have day activities at the local parks here. You have the at-home visits that allow one-on-one constructive dialogue, and that's where you work on your personal goals and you address the thoughts that you have. Oh, my child's doing this. Let's look into this. Another thing is they have the ability and the funding for hearing and seeing tests or sight tests for children. And the list goes on. And I feel like this this Healthy Families program allows us as a participant to have more resources at our fingertips and be more well aware, become a better parent, become a better citizen in your community. And that to me is all the reason why this program is an important program and why it should be more readily available to others. The importance of the family support specialist. It is that person who comes into your home on your one-on-one home visits. She's also the one who you would contact if you had questions or if you have suggestions. Like I have some older children. Do you have some on our next visit? Could you bring some activities for them or some learning milestones that we should be addressing for their age? And through these family support specialists, you have someone you can trust, someone that is non-biased with their personal views, but is there just to support you, your family, and to guide you and to provide you the most positive experience that you yourself and your family could participate in through this program. They also are the ones that deliver the diapers. They also are the ones that deliver the mystery reading box. They are the ones that invite you and give awareness to the additional meetings and activities and opportunities there are within the community. And that is why these home specialists are as important as they are. They are the facilitators, and they are the ones that really create a sense of belonging within the program. Healthy families should be continued to be supported because if you're a first-time mom or a seasoned mom like I am, Healthy Families provides the resources that you need to first be the best mom, the best person that you can be. And as you create yourself to be your best, you give your best. And as you are rearing your child with your tools and your education and the knowledge that you are given, and you can practice that and create a healthy home. And as you create a healthy home, it just goes into your community and it's just this beautiful circle. And I believe that the Healthy Families program is a program that allows the mom to focus on herself without guilt. Because in essence, as she's her best self, she will emulate that and teach that and rear that. Healthy Families helped me heal in all the right ways, which in turn benefits not only my children, but all the citizens, young and old, in which I interact with daily. Healthy Families is a program from birth to 5 years. And in my opinion, the whole goal of the program is to create a healthy home, to allow the parent to gain the tools and education and knowledge, and then how to actually address them to their growing child. The first 5 years of life, most people know this now, is vital in development. And so Healthy Families is there bridging that gap of maybe a non-support. So they're providing support, they're providing love and care, they're providing diapers, books, they're providing activities of social engagement, they're providing um, just a vast variety of things on top of that. And it's all for the betterment of you as the parent, your child, and then as a community engagement. They really try to keep it as positive as possible and bridge the gap between not not participating to fully flourishing in your local community.
Thank you, Emily, for sharing your experience so candidly with us today. I'm appreciative of how you so beautifully described that when Healthy Families allows you to better focus on yourself and the tools you need to successfully parent, it has a trickle effect, and the impact not only affects the immediate family, but the community within which you reside. WFSA and our advocates are proud to have supported the legislation that helped expand the program so that more parents and caregivers can be supported. WFSA is committed to expending the necessary resources to harness this momentum as we head into the 2023 legislative session. There is nobody better to share what we can expect after the recent midterm elections than our amazing partners over at Goodman-Schwartz Public Affairs. The Goodman-Schwartz team has been instrumental to WFSA policy work. They have leveraged relationships with changemakers, helping us make meaningful connections between our priorities and research in order to address gaps in legislative priorities. Joining us from Phoenix is Stuart Goodman, a co-founder of Goodman-Schwartz Public Affairs.
So I think if you look at Arizona in 2020, people called Arizona a purple state. I would call it more magenta. At the time, you had a Republican governor, you had a series of Republicans in statewide offices, you had a Republican-controlled legislature, albeit with a one-seat majority in both chambers, but they elected a Democratic senator. They brought Joe Biden to the White House. And so I think that's where the magenta comes in as opposed to the purple. And I think this election followed a similar path of what I would have expected based on 2020. I would also say that if you look at the conversations about who was elected in the Republican primaries. Now remember, these are low voter turnout elections. I think 35% of the electorate cast a vote in a primary. You had a very small percentage of independents casting votes in our primary. And so you had a series of statewide candidates on the Republican side that largely didn't reflect, I think, the broader Arizona population. It doesn't come across that way in legislative districts because those are narrow, focused areas, right? They're often non-competitive, with exception maybe 4 or 5 districts. So you wouldn't see that occur in a primary, in a legislative district. On a statewide race where there are no boundaries except the state boundaries, I'm not surprised that those elections, they were close, but I'm not surprised by the results because I don't think those Republican candidates that were selected in the primary were really reflective of the broader Republican Party, let alone the broader population in Arizona. So look, you've got a governor that inherited a $1 billion surplus. You have a legislature that is far more ideologically conservative today than it was yesterday, even though the numbers are the same, right? The last 2 years, there have been one-seat majorities in both the House and the Senate. But the ideological composition is much different. I see challenges in a new administration learning how to govern. I see challenges in a legislature that's never had to work with a Democratic governor, at least the vast majority of them. And I think there'll be growing pains along the way. That being said, these are professionals. These are good people, sometimes trapped in bad systems, and they will find a way out of necessity to work together. In fact, to some degree, it might actually be easier. And what I mean by that is I'll use the budget as a good example. This past session with a Republican governor, Republican legislature, the Republicans couldn't get a budget amongst themselves. They had to go to the Democratic store and develop a really bipartisan budget. That was challenging for leadership because you had enough folks on the Republican side that did not want to negotiate with Democrats. Fast forward to what we're going to see in 23 and 24, and actually 2 years after that for that matter, what you're seeing is by necessity, because of a Democrat in the governor's office, leadership is going to have to work with their Democratic legislators and create a bipartisan budget out of political necessity. In the long run, as clunky as it's going to be getting there, it's going to be better for everybody. No doubt there'll be bills that will be introduced, whether it's on non-discrimination issues, on abortion, or a series of other conservative social causes. I think those bills get hearings. I think some of those bills may even pass out of one chamber, may even pass out of two chambers, as they're trying to test this Democratic governor, as they're trying to test some of their colleagues. Do I see them being enacted into law? No, I don't. I think you have with Governor-elect Hobbs, soon to be Governor Hobbs, you have a backstop against those sort of bills. And over time, I think they'll stop testing her. But at least for the foreseeable future, I think what you'll see is those bills introduced, they'll make some level of progress, but ultimately they're not going to become law. So I look at Democratic priorities in terms of social nets, in terms of education, those sort of significant issues that really shouldn't have a partisan tone to them, but the reality is that they do. I think over time, over the course of the session, as both parties figure out how to work together, to coexist, I think you'll see solutions. If you go back to 2015, and Governor Ducey, it's his first term, you had a brand new Senate and brand new House of leadership. And what you ended up having was you didn't have a separation of powers. You had a parliament, right? And ultimately, then the governor's office largely yielded to what then Senate President Andy Biggs wanted to pursue. And several of those issues had to be rolled back the very next year. With divided government, I think that forces a more thoughtful approach to governing. It forces both parties to give. It forces compromise. It forces moving some of the extreme issues out of the way and focusing on what is achievable. And I think at the end of the day, again, I've used this term before, as clunky as it will be, and I guarantee you it will be clunky, the end result will likely be thoughtful changes in our policies that benefit Arizona residents. Look, I think staying involved and staying aware is critical, but there's also a mechanism, right? The legislature has a portal that allows individuals to register their support for and against legislation. It doesn't require you to speak. It's more of a amen chorus, either for or against. Being part of that's critical because those sheets stay with the bill throughout the entire process. And I do think legislators are impacted when they see a long list of individuals for or against the bill. I think that has an impact. And that is the easiest way, the most convenient way. You can do it remotely to have an impact on legislation. Having divided government, I think, is important in how it forces the extremes on both sides of the respective aisle to reach a compromise. You know, we often take policy, right, and we look at the ideal. But the art of politics is taking the ideal and sacrificing it for what's achievable. And I think that's a lost art. And we haven't needed to use that art in Arizona because since Jan Napolitano, you've had largely single party rule, and you've had some very good governors, you've had some very good legislatures. But I think having the forced compromise of differing views to achieve really desired common results, I think that makes us better. And I think it gets lost in that. And look, at least for the next 2 years, we're going to have this sort of dynamic. And I think that's important. I also think, and going back to the primary, that for those that are Game of Thrones fans, it was a red wedding. You had both parties really purging their moderates within their own parties, right? Conservatives on one side, certainly moderate Democrats on the other side. And so I think that now you have an ideologically different type of legislature that is going to have to find common ground. Look, when I was a baby lobbyist 30 years ago, we talked about Republican moderates as good on taxes and pro-choice. That's the easiest way to describe it. Today, there are no moderate Republicans based on philosophy. They're all conservative. But when we talk about moderate Republicans, we talk about not their philosophy, we talk about their personality. Can you work with them? Are they good individuals? Can you sit down and have an honest debate without being blackballed on every other issue you might work on, right? That is now the Republican moderate. They're all ideologically conservative. And so that's been a huge change in how they govern, and how we legislate, and how they implement. And so those are changes that for the system, when you now have a well-seasoned Democratic governor, you know, Governor Hobbs will have served, over a decade in the legislature, plus her time as Secretary of State, right? She is well-seasoned. She will develop a team around her that is equally well-seasoned. And you've got a legislature that has, almost half the House are brand new freshman members that have never served before. That's the dynamic, the push and the pull that makes the process, at least in the next few months, a little bit clunky as they all sort of get their traction and figure out how they're going to work together to solve common problems.
Thanks, Stuart. We always appreciate the opportunity to hear your in-depth perspective on Arizona's political landscape. It is helpful to understand how our state government can function with a Democratic governor and Republican majority legislature. I can already tell we have an exciting legislative session ahead of us, and we're excited for our continued partnership. With my final few minutes, I would like to close out by providing you with insight on how WFSA will proceed to pursue our goal of gender equity through our legislative priorities. As always, we continue to be committed to eliminating gender-based taxes that disproportionately affect menstruating people. We know that access to feminine hygiene products is essential in order to attend school, work, and participate fully in daily life. It is affirming to note that our aim of alleviating some economic stress was also something that was highlighted by Governor-elect Katie Hobbs, and we look forward to working in tandem to see hygiene tax legislation come to fruition in Arizona. It cannot be overstated that WFSA's mission is to create social, political, and economic mobility, and this session will have an emphasis on the economic mobility piece. Arizona is one of the lowest ranking states when it comes to passed legislation related to addressing the gender pay gap. Wage inequity deeply affects how women are able to support themselves and their families. This is an area WFSA will continue to address. And just as we supported the expansion of postpartum coverage, this legislative session We'll also support legislation that increases social and economic supports to achieve economic mobility for women of all identities. And of course, as Stuart mentioned so eloquently, there is still a chance that harmful bills may show face again in 2023, albeit with important stopgaps along the way. With this understanding, WFSA will continue to balance our priorities with our values. This means that we will run and support legislation that aligns with our mission, and we will oppose legislation that creates barriers for gender equity. Now, before we move to our last segment of today's events, we would like to take one final opportunity to thank today's presenting sponsor, TEP and Unisource.